Understanding the power of compound interest can change a person's life. I know it's certainly changed mine in a lot of ways. The problem is, most of us view compound interest in a very limited scope, even if we do understand its true power. So what I'm going to share today is 4 things we can invest in and how compound interest can have a dramatic impact in each of them. I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial Partners, and I'm here to show you how you can create a secure retirement. Now, to illustrate or to set the framework for what I want to talk about today, I'm going to show you the power of compound interest. We all know that compound interest is a good thing. We've heard Albert Einstein say it's the 8th wonder of the world. We know it's a great thing and it can really grow our money. But let's look at an example of how it works. I'm going to give you an option. You have 2 choices. You can either take $1 million today, or you can take 1 penny today, but that penny doubles in value every single day for a month. You have 5 seconds to choose. What are you going to choose? Well, if you're like most people, I know I didn't give you the full 5 seconds, you're going to probably take that $1 million. We compare those two and say, why on earth would anyone select a penny, even if it's doubling every day? It's 1 penny, 2 pennies, 4 pennies, 8 pennies, 16. There's no way that can be worth that much compared to $1 million, which is a lot of money. Well, here's the thing. After a month, so 31 days, the penny that is doubled is worth over $10.7 million at that point. So when you frame it that way, now all of a sudden you can see how that doubling penny, or that penny that doubles, is worth over 10 times the value over the $1 million. Why is that? Well, that's the power of compound interest. Compound interest takes something, even something small, and given enough time, compounds it and grows it in a way that our linear minds can't even comprehend when first presented with an example like this. So that's the power of compound interest, and we get, or a lot of us get, how that applies to a money sense. But there's other things we can invest in where it also applies. And what changed my life is seeing how this principle applies in so many other ways. And those 4 things that we can invest in are time, money, energy, and talent. And I want to give you an example of both. Let's start with money. Most people, when they hear compounding, they automatically equate it with finances or money or the portfolio that they have. And that's natural. That's the context in which most people are talking about it. So when it comes to money, we have trouble as human beings with our minds to grasp the power of compounding. We know that it works, but seeing it or understanding it really is hard to do unless you see some concrete examples. So going back to my example, you might have a hard time finding an investment that doubles in value every single day. If you could, that would be wonderful. We have a whole bunch of pennies that we could turn into $10 million in just a month. Unfortunately, investments that double every single day don't really exist. What does exist, though, is investing in great companies around the world, which historically, if you look at the S&P 500, generates about a 10% per year return. Can't predict that going forward, but it's a good place to start. Now, as you look at that, let's say you have $100,000. You have $100,000. Tomorrow, if you invest in something, it's probably still going to be worth something close to $100,000. After a week, after a month, it's probably not gone up or down that much. But if we apply compounding to that, after 10 years of growth, that $100,000 has turned into $259,000. After 20 years of growth, that $100,000 has turned into $672,000. After 30 years of growth, and mind you, this is assuming no additional contributions. After 30 years of growth, that $100,000 has turned into $1.744 million. And after 40 years of growth, that $100,000 has turned into well over $4.5 million. Now you might be watching this and say, James, that was great. Tell me that 40 years ago. Go back in time and give me $100,000 to invest. I'm close to retirement, or I don't have 40 years until I retire. That doesn't necessarily matter. You probably do have potentially 30, 40 years left of life. Based on life expectancy tables for average health, I know a lot of people watching this are maybe above average health, but if you're in just average health, and if you're a 50-year-old couple, you have at least a 50-50 chance that one of you will live until the age of 90. 50 to 90 is exactly 40 years. So just because you're maybe approaching retirement in the next 5, 10, 15 years doesn't necessarily mean the investing will stop, which doesn't mean the compounding will stop. Find ways to continue to apply this even if you're not at the very beginning of your investment journey. So that's how compounding applies to investments. Probably nothing new there for you. Let's talk about how it applies to other areas as well. And I want you to think of it from this perspective. With money, we can either spend it or we can invest it. If I spend it, I'm trading my money for a service, or I'm trading my money for a good. There's a transaction that's involved. If I invest it, I'm taking my money and it's magnifying itself. It's expanding upon itself so that I have more money in the future. Well, the same thing happens with time. There's two ways that we can invest our time. One way is, how can I invest my time in a way to create more time? There's several different examples of how this works. Is this training someone at work? Is this training someone that can do some of the things that you do, which frees up more time on your part? Maybe it takes a few hours up front to do so, but it buys you so many more hours over time because that person is now doing what you were doing before. One thing I personally do is I do not like going to the grocery store. For whatever reason, I don't want to ever step into a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods or whatever it is ever again if I could avoid it. What do? Well, I do the meal delivery. On Amazon Prime, I get Whole Foods Fresh, and what happens is that saves me a tremendous amount of time every week from having to go to the grocery store, drive there, find parking, go through it, and then drive home. There's the pre-selected items that we get every single week, and the nice thing is it just shows up on our doorstep. Even from a financial perspective, kind of a side note, but this works out. When my wife and I go into a grocery store, we can't help but to be distracted by all the fun food choices on the shelves. And when we actually go into the grocery store, that temptation is sometimes too much. And we end up coming out with a lot more things than we thought we even needed. In fact, we actually did need, and we end up spending more than we should have. By investing in grocery delivery, paying for the tip or paying for the extra cost actually saves us money, but more importantly, it saves us a bunch of time from not having to do that. Invest in routines. Steve Jobs famously wore the same thing over and over and over again. What did that do? It freed up his time so that when he woke up in the morning, he didn't waste his time or his energy thinking about, what do I want to wear today? He already knew exactly what that was going to be. So find things. Is it maybe you don't like tending to the yard? Can you hire someone to do that for you? Maybe you don't like different home improvement projects. Can you find someone to do that for you? One aspect of investing time, instead of spending time, is to do something that takes some time today, but frees up some multiple of that time in the future. The second aspect of it, once you've freed up that time, how do you spend it? What experiences are you investing your time into? What trips are you taking? What time with people that are special to you are you taking? As a financial planner, I see this so clearly, that we're all so concerned about money as this resource that we have and how do we grow it. But money comes and goes. Money can always be replaced. Time is the one thing that you will never ever be able to replace. So how do we invest into things that create more time for us? And then how do we take that remaining time and invest it into the experiences that is ultimately what great financial planning and investing is all about? To free up the time and the ability to do what we care about doing with the people we care about doing it with. So where's your time being invested as opposed to just spent? The next thing is energy. Going back to it, are you spending your energy or are you investing your energy? Very basic things with this. What does investing in a good night's sleep mean for you? Well, it means for those 8 hours or however many hours you invested in a good night's sleep, but it wasn't just those hours that were impacted. Now, every single hour of the next day, you have more energy. You can do more, and that energy is magnified because of that. Investing in exercise, investing in healthy eating, investing in a hobby that excites you. These are all examples of things that you invest your energy into it, and because of that, you have more energy as a result. In the same way we invest our money and hope it grows, if we're investing our energy into these things, that helps to magnify the energy that we have. I know that if you look at something, if you look at studies, if you're doing things that drain you, say you wake up in the morning and you have to go to a job that you hate and there's tasks that you hate, you just have no energy left the rest of the day. You might not even have a very busy schedule, but by the end of the day, you are absolutely exhausted because your energy is completely spent. I know some of my busiest days, I'm fortunate I love what I get to do. Some of my busiest days, where from morning until night, I'm talking to clients and planning and doing all these things, I feel so incredibly energized at the end of the day because I'm investing a ton of energy, but it's into things that create more energy. And it excites me getting to see the transformation of things happening in clients' lives. And so that's an example of how do we take our energy and invest it into something that creates more energy as opposed to spending our energy. So think about compounding. All of these things build upon themselves. Healthier eating leads to healthier sleep, which leads to more energy for fun activities, and it just grows and magnifies all the way, and it can have a very positive impact on our lives. And then finally, talent. And this is a big one. I've been in the financial planning industry now for over a decade. Now, if you assume that I work 2,000 hours a year, which is just a standard work week over 10 years, that's 20,000 hours of time spent financial planning. Now, I can say definitively, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I am a far greater financial planner today than I was a little over 10 years ago when I got into this industry. Why is that? Well, it was investing in talent, investing in CFP coursework, investing in understanding complex investment solutions, investing in understanding how markets work or different types of retirement plans or all these different things so that today it comes very naturally. But it was the result of hours and hours and hours and years of investment in that talent. Malcolm Gladwell has a famous book called Outliers. And in that book, he says, quote, "Researchers have settled on what they believe is the magic number for true expertise, 10,000 hours. So whether it's playing music, whether it's an athlete, whether it's financial planning, whether it's a hobby that you enjoy doing, to truly master something, experts have shown that it takes about 10,000 hours of investment into that talent in order to become an expert." He goes on to say this in his book. He says, once a musician has enough ability, so they're good enough to get into a top musical school, the thing that distinguishes one performer from another is how hard he or she works. That's it. And what's more, the people at the very top don't work just harder or even much harder than everyone else. They work much, much harder, showing that the more we invest into our talent, the more of a benefit, the more that's going to create for us over time, but it takes that investment. So with that talent, are you just going to spend it and go do what you're doing, or are you going to continue to invest and refine and improve what you're doing? One more quote from this. Naval Ravikant has a famous tweet storm. So if you're on Twitter and go to his page, he has a famous tweet storm where he lays out a whole bunch of different principles about life and work and philosophy and a whole bunch of other things. One of his tweets, he says, "Arm yourself with specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage." Someone in an interview asked him about that tweet. They said, "What do you mean by that?" He then went on to say, "We have this idea that everything can be taught in school. In fact, the most interesting things cannot be taught, but everything can be learned. And very often that learning either comes from some innate characteristics in your DNA, or it could be through your childhood where you learn soft skills, which are very, very hard to learn or teach later in life, or it's something that is brand new, so nobody else knows how to do it either, or it's true on-the-job training because you're pattern matching into highly complex environments, basically building judgment in a specific domain. Very often, specific knowledge is at the edge of knowledge. It's also stuff that's just being figured out or is really hard to figure out. So if you're not 100% into something else, or into it, somebody else who is 100% into it will outperform you. And they won't just outperform you by a little bit, they'll outperform you by a lot, because now we're operating in the domain of ideas. Compound interest really applies and leverage really applies. So if you're operating with 1,000 times leverage and somebody is right 80% of the time and somebody else is right 90% of the time, the person who's right 90% of the time will literally get paid hundreds of times more by the market because of the leverage and because of the compounding factors and being correct. Now, some of that may not make sense, but why am I saying this? In this context, once I had, or several times I've had people come to me and say, I feel like I'm getting a late start. Most recently is someone who went to medical school or residency, started their own private practice, and they went years and years and years without saving a dime to their investments. And so the concern was, oh my gosh, I've gotten such a late start. How can I do this? Well, to apply this quote from Naval, they didn't get a late start. They weren't investing money, but what they were investing was their talent, their specific knowledge. And they invested so many tens of thousands of hours into that specific knowledge that now the market was willing to pay them significantly more than the average person could ever demand in terms of an income or salary. Why? Because they worked much, much, much harder than the average person at that job. So now they have the talent that can demand a higher salary, which from a financial perspective allows them to play catch up on the financial side a whole lot quicker. So as we look at this, the principle of compounding interest, it's just not a financial thing. When you look at the way it can elevate talent, which allows us to command a higher salary or more income, or when we look at how we invest our time, which frees up more time or gives us the time to do things we want to do, or free up energy, really what this is doing is saying, how can we look at our whole life? So often we separate, here's our finances, and then here's everything else in life. When we view that comprehensively, and view everything as part of one life, we can see how compound interest can really accelerate and maximize our time, can maximize our energy, can maximize our talent, can maximize our money in the same principle that applies to that penny turning into $10.7 million also applies to those other fields. So where are you investing your time, your money, your energy, your talents? So often textbook financial planning, what the books say, it really is how do we apply compound interest to money? But to me, I believe the sign of a great financial plan is a life well lived. And a life well lived means you are also investing your time, your energy, your talents into things that generate more time, energy, and talents so that you can have that life well lived. And the power of compounding interest is really at the heart of all of it. Thanks for watching. This is James Canal with Root Financial Partners. If you enjoyed this video and can think of someone else who might find value from it, please share this with them. And also be sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you want more great resources about how you can create a secure retirement, check out our podcast. It's called Ready for Retirement. And finally, if you're interested in our services and how we help people create their secure retirements, be sure to check out our website at rootfinancialpartners.com.